Every day, we speak things into our lives without realizing the power behind them. Welcome back to 21 Grams. This is a space where we slow things down, where we sit with the weight of what we say and the things we don't even realize we're carrying. So, tonight, I want to talk about something that's small but holds enormous power. Something we use every single day, something that shapes our relationships, our confidence, our future, often without us even noticing it. Your words. Because the power of the tongue is real, and some of us aren't tired. We're just exhausted from the weight of our own words. Some of us aren't even stuck. We're just repeating a story that was never ours to begin with. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about words as weight. You've heard people say, words are just words. But that's never been true. Think about it. Words carry weight, words land, they linger, especially if it's something that really hit you. Words settle into places deeper than we expect. So, think about this. How many moments in your life were changed by a sentence? Not a scream, not a fight, just a sentence. Sentences like, "You're not good at that. This always happens to me." Or, "I'm just not built for more." Things like, "It is what it is." Those phrases don't disappear after you say them. Say it with me. Those phrases don't disappear after you say them. They stay, they echo, and the worst part is, they start to feel like facts. They start to feel like facts. Because the most dangerous words that are spoken aren't the ones that are said to us, they're the ones we say to and about ourselves. So let's talk about quiet curses. Some curses don't sound dramatic, they sound normal. Some curses sound like, "I'm always tired. I'm bad with money. I never catch a break. This is just my luck." You see, we say those things casually, sometimes jokingly, and sometimes too comfortably. But here's the truth. Your brain, it doesn't know when you're joking. All your brain does is it hears repetitions, it hears patterns, and eventually, after hearing all of that, it builds an identity around them. It builds the identity around the things you say. When you say you're not good enough, "This always happens to me. I'm not lucky. I'm bad with money," things like that. And I'll be honest, I've said things to myself and about myself that I would never let someone say to someone that I love. And that right there was my wake up call. If you tell yourself long enough that you're behind, you're going to stop trying to catch up. If you keep saying you're lucky, you're going to stop recognizing opportunity. And if you keep calling yourself broken, you're going to stop believing that you can heal. And that's not spirituality. That's called conditioning. We're conditioning our brains to believe those curses that we say. So let's change that because this has happened to me. I'm going to be real with you about something. All of this cursing and conditioning, I've done this in my own creative journey. There was a point where I didn't even realize how often I was speaking against myself. Every time I had an idea, even before I wrote it down, I'd say things like, "Nobody's going to care about this. I'm probably too late." I'll say things like, "There are people doing this better than me." And I wasn't just doubting myself, I was narrating failure before I even started. And the wild part is, I didn't hear that as a negative. I didn't hear it as negativity. To me, it sounded normal. It even sounded responsible. I had a lot of goals before. I wanted to be a photographer. I wanted to be a street documentary photographer. I wanted to start this podcast years ago. But I kept speaking these curses and doubting myself. And even though it sounded normal and responsible that nobody's going to care about this, nobody's going to care about my photos, nobody's going to care about my podcast, nobody's going to care what I do, they were still programming and conditioning my brain to believe that I wasn't going to be good enough at any of this. And it sounded like I was just being realistic. But looking back, I can see it clearly. I was cursing my own creativity. I was shrinking ideas before they even had a chance to breathe. I was talking about myself, or I was talking myself out of opportunities I didn't even get to meet yet. I was building walls with sentences that felt harmless in the moment. It took me a long time to realize that I wasn't lacking talent or discipline. I was just repeating a story that kept me small. And we do that a lot. We repeat stories that keep us small. Let that sit with you for a second. But once I changed the way I talked about my work, then my work changed. And that's when words became real. But why? Why do words become real? Why is it that we get conditioned and programmed after cursing ourselves and saying those negative things? And that's because your mind is a listener before it's a thinker. It absorbs before it questions. So when you constantly narrate your life negatively, you're just describing reality. You're also training it. You start making decisions that match that language. You start to do things like avoid risk because you already know how that ends. You even lower your expectations because it never works out anyway. You stay small because that's just who I am. And slowly, those words turn into walls. But not because the world put them there, but because you built them sentence by sentence. Let's pay attention to how we speak when no one's listening. When you make a mistake, do you say, I'm human, or I'm an idiot? When something doesn't work out, do you say, I'm hurt, but I'll adjust? Or do you say, see, I knew it. It is what it is. Would you talk to someone you love the way you talk to yourself? Because if not, that's a sign. And it's not a sign of weakness, but of habit. And habits, we can all agree on, those can change. So let's rewrite the language. And this isn't about toxic positivity. This isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's about precision. So instead of saying, I'm always anxious, let's try saying, I'm feeling anxious right now. Instead of saying things like, I can't do this, let's try saying, this is hard, but I am learning. Instead of saying, my life is a mess, let's try, I'm in a season of rebuilding. In a few episodes back, I spoke about seasons. How some seasons aren't necessarily meant for growth or accomplishing goals or surviving. Some seasons is also about rebuilding. Language creates breathing room. So let's start building by changing our language, because language creates breathing room, and breathing room creates possibilities. You're not lying to yourself, you're giving yourself space to evolve. So let's switch up the language. Let's Consider that this is a season of rebuilding and give yourself some space to evolve. Let's start speaking life. There's something powerful about speaking towards who you are becoming, even when you're not there yet, right? And I'm not talking about affirmations shouted into the mirror, but quiet, honest declarations. Things like, I'm working on myself. I'm allowed to grow. I'm not who I was. I don't need to rush my healing. Those sentences, they don't demand perfection, but they do invite progress. And progress is how we change. Progress is how we change. So before you go tonight, or whenever you're hearing this podcast, I want you to notice something. Listen to how you talk about your life, your past, your body, your future. If your words sound heavy, ask yourself who taught you to speak that way, and then decide if you still want to carry that voice. Ask yourself who taught you to speak that way, and then decide if you still want to carry that voice. Because the power of the tongue is real. You don't have to curse your life to be honest about it. You can tell the truth without tearing yourself down. And I want to leave you with this. Your words are seeds. Make sure you're planting something you want to grow. This is 21 Grams. And like always, I'll be here for the next conversation.